Now that's what happens when volcanoes erupt in movies, by a huge cinematic sound blast. But real eruptions sound nothing like the Hollywood fiction. The eruption of Krakatoa in 1893 is not only one of the most catastrophic volcanic eruptions in recorded history, but it also emitted the loudest natural sound we know, with the acoustic wave being so powerful that it circled Earth 3 times. This first clip was from a 2006 BBC drama called Krakatoa, The Last Days, with the story based on real eyewitnesses of the eruption. It is quite an accurate portrayal of being stunned by the sound, with just ringing in our ears. Another movie that portrayed the eruption was the 1968 disaster movie Krakatoa, East of Java. Even though the movie was nominated for Oscars, it is apparently quite inaccurate. For starters, Krakatoa, currently in Indonesia, was west of Java, not east, but the producers thought the title sounded better with east in it. It's always the producers. Other complaints were that the movie heroes escaped the tsunami waves. With speeds up to 800 kilometers per hour, it would be there in like 3 minutes. There is no way they could get on a ship and navigate away from that. Also, the volcano erupted suddenly and instantly. In reality, the build-up lasted months. There is a full document that lists all the inaccuracies. I only mentioned a couple. But the obvious one is the sound. So in a movie we get loud explosions, but they sound more like a bomb or a cannon. To be fair to the filmmakers, it would be impossible to convey the loudness and the aftermath. No audio system could replicate that. And if they did, they would shatter our eardrums in the process, so I'm okay with the creative license. But what about the real thing? There is an alleged phonograph recording of the Krakatoa eruption we can listen to. However, many online skeptics are wary of it. The recording devices of 1883 were not only simple, but also rare. More than likely, as we don't have any other recorded sound, this one is fake. Despite the disappointment, the estimated loudness of Krakatoa was around 310 dB. And just to have an understanding of the scale, the Royal National Institute for Deaf People says that 130 decibels is a threshold of pain for most people. It's like a sound of an airplane taking off 100 meters away. You could hear the final explosion 3,000 miles or about 4,800 kilometers away. That's like London in UK to Quebec, Canada. There was a barometer at the gasworks about 100 miles or 160 kilometers from Krakatoa that recorded 172 decibels, over 100 miles away. Now that's enough to damage our hearing. The sonic boom for people and animals closer to the eruption must have been devastating. We can read some of the reactions. The noise sounded like great guns being fired at irregular intervals. The detonations were heard so distinctly that it appeared impossible they could have come from such a distance as Krakatoa. The sounds were thought to be distant salvos of artillery. In December 1927, Krakatoa started erupting again, and by 1930 created a small island called Anak Krakatau, a child of Krakatoa, which has been active and growing from time to time. Since then, the Tonga eruption of 2022 was probably the second loudest, with one pressure wave reaching an altitude higher than the International Space Station, and a sonic boom heard over 6,000 kilometers away in Alaska, creating massive tsunamis up to 45 meters in height. Now I reckon the most well-known historic eruption must be Mount Vesuvius and the destruction of Pompeii, presented in Hollywood fashion by Paul W.S. Anderson in 2014 film called Pompeii. the eruption is of course very cinematic. Fire and explosions underscored by epic music and layered with additional sound. In reality, lava bombs must have killed many citizens of the city, but looked less like a fireball and more like this. So no tails, but rather thick blobs that flow out, and with the sound that reflects that. Therefore, probably fewer surround swooshes. Doctor Who also portrayed the eruption in a quite cinematic way, with music masking most of the sound. The real eruption, which happened in 79 AD, was definitely one of the most devastating in history, destroying Pompeii and Herculaneum, as well as other settlements. The total death toll is unknown, but it must have been thousands, with the sound of series of explosions heard by everyone. After the earthquake's initial explosions, most of what people heard were probably sounds of surrounding destruction, as well as others screaming for safety. Then, the whoosh of fast-traveling pyroclastic surge, clouds of hot gas and rock that obliterated everything in its path. There was no safe place for you. 1981 St Helens dramatized the 1980 eruption in Washington, USA. Equal to 26 megatons of TNT, considered the most disastrous in a country's history. The one you probably know, though, is 1997 Dante's Peak with Pierce Brosnan and Linda Hamilton, set in a fictional town but apparently inspired by Mount St Helens eruption. For the purpose of the story, weeks of earthquakes and emissions are condensed to a day and a sudden massive eruption. And we get everything: Plinian eruption, pyroclastic and Hawaiian lava flows.
What is that?
That's a pyroclastic cloud.
All in one sequence. This is not how volcanoes behave. It's all dependent on magma conditions with either explosive or effusive eruptions. Also, even though the explosions seem loud, obviously dialogue is mixed louder.
Come on.
And even with their science advisors on board, the filmmakers went for maximum impact and excitement rather than realism. Apparently, near the volcano, the conditions created a so-called quiet zone, an acoustic shadow, with people saying that they didn't actually hear anything when St. Helens erupted. But dozens of miles away, people noted a series of low-frequency booms. Windows were shaking. They heard a sonic boom, and then ash covered everything. Reading through these stories, it seems that the boom was louder, further from the actual blast. At first, I thought someone was driving too fast and missed the turn, running into the end of the building. I ran outside, and the street was empty. My ears witnessed a volcanic explosion. Several of my working buddies also heard it. I thought somebody was blasting stumps not too far away. If the quiet zone near the mountain is true, it makes it even more fascinating. Robert Kellenberg, director of acoustics program and laboratory at the University of Hartford, said that topography, wind and temperature can all affect the sound. 2009 apocalyptic disaster movie 2012 is not about the Yellowstone supervolcano. But it features the eruption that triggers the end of the world. Yellowstone would not suddenly explode, and even if it did, no one would ever escape the seismic waves, with even NASA saying that 2012 was, quote, the most scientifically unrealistic film ever made, and they had to make a website to calm people by debunking the movie. But what about the real thing? According to the US Geological Survey, there were actually 3 massive eruptions in Yellowstone: 2.1 million, 1.3 million, and one more around 631,000 years ago. They say that these super eruptions were thousands of times larger than the 1980s Mount St Helens and covered most of the western North America in thick ash. Fingers crossed we don't get to experience that anytime soon. But how would it sound for real? We can listen to other eruptions like the one in Papua New Guinea. The eruption would collapse parts of the mountain range with a series of Krakatoa-like blasts audible in nearby regions. You wouldn't want to be anywhere near it. Do movies get it right? At least in part? Yes and no. They give us the scale, the danger, and the destruction of these natural events. Even with actual scientists on board, filmmakers often choose the drama, the music, the epic sound that makes for a cool scene. They look spectacular, but sound nothing like a real thing. But you know, I wouldn't reference the portrayals on any geology exams. Thanks for watching.
I just think you're a really cool island, and I'd like to get to know— Oh, God! Oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. You're just so pretty. Please don't tell the other islands.